You can learn from history. This was the launch pad right here. Larry Shaw said, boy, I bet that trailer went for a ride back there. And Claude Reed said, no, it ain't back there. I mean, I haven't been standing around this place since 79. That was my father teaching me how to be a man. You had to walk to someone's house and knock on the door.
So get this, we're about to go on a field trip with Mark to look at some of the old buildings and historic places around here that he had, I don't know, associations with. I'm not exactly sure what he's gonna show us, but we're gonna hop in his Denali and see where we go. So this is it, the famous GMC. Like, if you didn't buy this thing, I might not be sitting here right now. That's how we first started going back and forth.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I couldn't remember. Arlene asked me how I knew you, and I said, I don't know. He said something to me on social media, and that's like, kind of how. And then I started checking you out, and now I watch all your videos.
Where's the first interesting stop?
We're gonna go up here to where my dad's trucking company used to be in the 70s. He built a shop. First few years we raced out of the garage back, you know, we had a 2-car garage behind our house, and so I guess the first 3 years we raced out of that garage at the house, and then he built us a shop up here next to the trucking company, and so we raced our ASA car out of there in 77 and 78, and in 78 we ran for ASA championship, and so we raced out of here to Indiana and Wisconsin and, you know, Ohio and all those places. So every weekend, you know, we had to drive from Batesville up through St. Louis and up there. That's the year that we had the Ford Cube van and blew 3 motors up in the tow truck. We blew more motors up in the tow truck than we did in the race car that year. There's lots of tow truck stories, man. Lots of tow truck stories.
All those cool stories are heavily detailed and documented in his podcast, which is absolutely worth listening to for those things. You already told them once, so we don't got to go through all of them again, but I really hope people go listen to that, because there's a lot more useful information than just cool stories with like the whole your rise and comeback and all that stuff. It can help people if they are listening to it with that lens.
I agree. You can learn from history. I made a lot of mistakes, and I had some tough times. One of the things, you know, you forget about is when we were blowing those engines up in the tow truck, we're up on the 2 lanes in northern Arkansas, and there were no cell phones back then. You had to walk to someone's house and knock on the door and hope that they let you in and let you borrow their telephone to call for rescue. So yeah, it was a crazy time back in the day.
I do think about that whenever I get stuck somewhere. I'm like, well, you know, this really isn't that bad. It's okay. I can call somebody. There's AAA, or, you know, it's just time. What you're upset about is the time, not whether or not you're actually in danger.
Yes.
Did he originally build this?
He built this. Yeah. Before that, he had a shop in town in Batesville, and that's where my first race car was built, was in that shop. It was obviously smaller than this, but this was our racing logo for 1977.
Wow, that's freaking awesome.
Yeah, I remember right now, you know, finishing our car, and, you know, brand new race car. You built a new race car every winter, and I remember finishing our car and rolling it outside and taking pictures of it before we went to the first race, and there's photos of it setting on the trailer in 78 as well. But we did it in 77. I think we took the picture of the car over here, and then in 78 the car was on the trailer over on the other side of the building. And both times we were getting ready to go to New Smyrna for Speed Weeks in February, Yeah, those cars were the first 2 pavement cars that we built the first 2 years. They were a lot different than those dirt cars, and they were a lot more sophisticated. They were Howe chassis, nice race cars. You know, our first 2 race cars were extremely crude. First one was extremely crude. The second one was better, and the third one was some better than that, because we took it up to Larry Phillips actually, and had Phillips put the roll cage and all on it, so it had a real roll cage. That first race car had a water pipe, you know, for a roll cage, and was all stick welded and everything. By the time we got to our third race car, they were starting to be fairly nice. You want to get out, or?
Yeah. Hey, you said the sign was there. I didn't think it was gonna be like the sign.
The sign.
That's
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Still there. I didn't even remember the checkered flags. I didn't remember that. And as you can see, it's faded more where the sun hits it. Where the trees got it shaded, it's a little bit more orange. But that was my colors.
Was this building not here?
It wasn't here originally when we built the shop. Yeah, that was built later.
Wow.
I could see the retaining on the bottom half, but yeah, I didn't even remember that.
And the man door. Wow.
Yeah.
That is.
Spent some long hours in this thing.
So you probably went in and out of this door.
Yeah.
Thousands of times.
I did. Thousands of times. And it was really nice. There was an upstairs over here at the trucking company, and my dad had set up a cafeteria up there, so they cooked for lunch every day for everybody that worked here. And so, you know, we could just walk over there and have lunch, come back to work, and work all right into the night. So we worked day and night. Like I said, I worked here during the day, and then, you know, maybe some of the night help, you know, some of the volunteer help might come in at night. So you pretty much had to be around day and night.
So you work all day yourself, and then people come help you at night, and you're gassed and you want to go home, but they're still there and they're still going. So you're like, I just have to keep moving my feet, because otherwise I'll lose the help of 3 people if I throw in the towel, because they're not going to want to work if you stop. So
Right.
you end up just draining yourself completely, but that's how you get things done sometimes.
Well, yes, it is. And volunteer help was crucial in the early years. You know, you couldn't do it without them.
How did you find the volunteers? Why did they want to volunteer?
They loved going to the races. So they come and help at night, you know, after work or whatever. You know, they might come and help, and then, you know, you'd take them with you to go racing, and that's what it was all about. They loved being a part of a team in a car, and the excitement of seeing the car, you know, run up front or go fast or whatever.
How hard is it to push a broken car up this hill?
I don't remember. It must not have, we must have almost always drove it. I can't remember, but it would have been certainly hard, because at that time we were running spools in the rear end, so the rear end was locked. So if you weren't going straight, those things were really hard to fit. Actually, always when you pushed them around the pits, the right rear would always kind of jerk and spin, you know, because we ran spools for forever, from '77 until I went NASCAR racing. That's all we ran.
I can't believe this. Like, the sticker's still there and all that stuff. It's like just total. When was the last time you came back here?
I mean, I haven't been standing around this place since 79.
Wow. Is anything coming back now that you're like standing here looking at stuff?
It is. You know, I'd forgot the sticker. I forgot that the logo was on the roll-up door. Yeah, but it's a long time ago. But I remember being in the shop and working on the cars and having a phone in there, you know, and talking to Ed Howe. We had gone up to Owasso, Michigan, and raced, and I ran third. Junior Hanley won, and Bob Seneca ran second. But I ran side by side with Bob Seneca a whole lot of the race and finished third. Well, Herb, that was I'd call him the general manager of Ed Howe's place, was in the grandstands and was so impressed that he called me here in the shop. And I was still rookie. I was rookie of the, I was actually won rookie of the year for ASA that year, but I was nobody, a nothing in that world. And he was so impressed that he called me and he says, "Hey, you really ran good yesterday. I've got a setup that might help you." Because I was running an 1150 and a 600 across the front and a pair of 350s, because they gave me the setup. And he said, we got a setup we could give you, a 1050 and an 800 and a pair of 250s and all this stuff. So I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that somebody from Ed Howe's would call me and give me a setup that was supposed to run even better. And then later that year, when we locked up the Rookie of the Year, Herb called again and he says, "Hey, we're going to give you a chassis for next year." So that was kind of the beginning of getting free stuff.
So this was your launch pad right here.
This was the launch pad right here. The dirt racing got me to here, but this was the launch pad. We won ASA Rookie of the Year out of this building, and then we won the ASA Championship out of this building. And those ASA championships were the fuel that got me into NASCAR.
That's so cool. So this is what makes buildings cool, even maybe cooler than cars, because you meet people in buildings, you learn things in buildings. You have your highs, your lows, you dragging the broken car in with a lawnmower, all that stuff. It happens in these places, and they're kind of like, I don't know, not really talked about.
You're right. That's really important, I think, to think about, because now that we've walked around and looked at the cars and talked about the cars, I've really never put a focus on this building, and it has more history to it than those cars do. Those cars are just one little thing, where this was the launch pad. You really hit it, hit the nail on the head with that.
Well, this is what we do. This is the kind of stuff that gets me fired up. I like digging for it and finding it. And it was even like when we were driving out here, I thought, I bet there's got to be like an old garage somewhere where his car used to be, or where was the trucking company. Like I was kind of thinking of that. I'm like, well, you're gonna drive 11 hours. I want to see the whole thing, like what, or even like, I don't know, even coming up here on that little hairpin thing, like wonder how many times he's gone really fast up this thing. Like, is this what prepared you for Watkins Glen?
Oh yeah, the roads around here, yeah, definitely. People, when I first started road racing, when people, "How did you learn to road race like that?" Because we always ran good, and I'm like, man, the back roads of Arkansas, this is the same thing as driving. I said road racing is the same thing as driving the back roads of Arkansas. You go as fast as you can and stay out of the ditch.
Did you ever throw any old parts back there or anything?
I didn't, but actually when I worked out of this shop, my mother lived just across the road and I lived with her. And so most of the time I would walk over here to the shop and walk back over. So somehow or another I was getting up and over that right there.
You climbed over the wall?
I don't remember how I did it. Wow. But since we've had so much fun looking at this shop, I want to take you and drive you by the property. It's not the exact same shop, but they built a new metal building right where the metal building was, where we built that first race car.
Okay, let's go check that out.
Took it to the track. We took it down the road and ran it and stepped on it and kind of ran it through its paces on the highway.
That's awesome.
When did this property get sold and no longer the trucking company?
So my dad moved the company from here. He outgrew this sometime in the early 80s, and he moved into another building here in Batesville that was a little bit bigger property. Had a lot more room to expand, and he expanded from, I'm gonna say he ran 30 trucks out of this, and he expanded over there to well over 50 trucks, and you know, really expanded. But then it got too big, too hard to manage, and so he sold out. And then about a year after he sold out, he started another one, and he started it down in Searcy. It's about 50 miles from here, and he never let it get over 40 trucks because he felt like he could manage it, you know, drivers, and keep his arms around it more. He was very hands-on, and he bought his first truck the year I was born in 1959, and built a really successful business. But he let it get too big once, and he couldn't keep control of it like he wanted, and keep it profitable like he wanted. He could make more money with 30 to 40 trucks than he could with 80, you know, 60 or 80.
That's interesting. Did he sell it to start a new one, or did he sell it because he wanted to be done and then missed it and wanted to start another one?
You know, I don't really know what his motivation for selling out exactly was, and what his plan was, because that was in the early to mid 80s, and I was really immersed in, and I wasn't living here, of course. I moved from here in March of '79, and you know, just once in a while I'd come back and visit, but that was it, you know, just for a short period of time. My career really was taking off, and I was working all the time, so we weren't, you know, we weren't real close and in contact during those years. So I'm not sure if he had a plan on starting another one, or if he had a plan on, he couldn't have been retiring. I don't know exactly what his plan was.
And that turn was even banked and everything.
Yeah. And they still turn over all the time, turn trucks over there all the time. You know, my dad was quite a character. I went up that thing around that curve way too fast, I'm sure, plenty, but my dad was the real crazy driver. He once told me that, and this was when he was driving 80s vintage Trans Ams in the 80s, which really handled really good. But any curve, whatever the speed limit was for the curve, he knew he could do it double. So if it said 45, it was a 45-degree curve speed limit, he knew he'd hit it at 90, he'd be fine.
Wow.
So, yeah, my dad was crazy. He was crazy. So much fun. He was pretty wild.
Then there was some time when you were going somewhere and he tried to pass somebody and ended up sending your truck and trailer off of the ditch and tools flying everywhere. And
yeah, that is right. That was 1977. We left here, and we left late, and he was mad because he couldn't get away from the trucking company. So we only got about 45 minutes up the road, and he was passing on a curve, and all of a sudden we met somebody, so he wheeled it off in the ditch. We pulled like a U-Haul type trailer with the spare engine, 55-gallon drum of racing fuel, and all our tools and everything were in that. And we were headed to a 200-lap ASA race in Fort Smith, Arkansas. So we went through the ditch, and we stopped, and Larry Shaw said, "Boy, I bet that trailer went for a ride back there." And Claude Reed said, "No, it ain't back there." So it broke off. There were racing fuel everywhere, racing engine in the woods, tools, or 9/16 here and a 1/2 inch there. I mean, it was like crazy, all stuff scattered. And so we had to go. So we drove the truck back out onto the road, and he went, I was so mad at him I could have killed him. And he went into the house and called somebody at the trucking company, come and get him. And we went on without our spare motor and all that stuff to practice and qualify. And he got all of our junk out of the woods and loaded up and came up the next day. But he had a wreck even that. He came up the next day, but he ran off the road there too. He didn't wreck, but he ran off the road. He was he was wild. He was a wild one.
You think you learned some of your driving ability from riding around with him as a little kid?
No question. I you know, definitely became a race car driver because of you know, the things that we shared, experiences that we shared, and the passion that we had for things that go fast. He was an incredible person. Right up here, we're just about there. And like I say, I'm not sure why they took the metal building down, but they put another one up just almost in the identical spot. As we come up here, it will be here on the right. That's it. I mean, that's it right there, the SNL. And this garage door that's open, you know, that may be the same building, because it had that mezzanine. That's the same building. There was where you see the refrigerator was a Coke machine, and my dad, and the Cokes were 10 cents. And my dad gave me a key to that thing because I was always hitting him up for gas money for my mini bike. And he gave me the key to that, and he says, "You keep that thing full and don't ask me for no more money." And so I got all the change, and that was my gas money and stuff. But in that stall right there, we parked that car, that 55 Chevy that just drug it out of the woods, and parked it right there. And we started gutting out the interior and all that stuff. And then Troy Lynn Jeffrey, our head mechanic, started you know, welding a roll cage in it. And Larry Shaw had a auto parts repair shop just 2 blocks this way, and he would be driving by here on the way home, and it piqued his interest. What are they doing to that car in there? So he wheeled in here one evening and hung around and started helping, and pretty soon he started coming by here every evening. And so if you don't know the history of dirt track racing and Larry Shaw, you should, because Larry got his start working at night. He worked for 3 years. He worked every night in the shop with my dad. And then in '77, the 4th year we raced, he sold his shop and came to work for us full time. So he worked for us for a year full time, and it got to be too much traveling for him. So he quit and did other things, and eventually moved back here and started building race cars. And now he builds, you know, he's built 200 dirt cars a year forever, mostly modifieds, and is one of the biggest names in, you know, modified dirt car in the nation. And all that he started his career like I did, right there in that stall.
That is so cool. You think those SNL guys have any idea about anything in there?
I don't. And you know, I think I was wrong about this building. This is the building, because see where that white pickup trucks park there? Yeah. You used to park the trucks down here, and then you would pull them. They would be parked side by side, tractor trailers, and you would pull them up there, and the pressure washer was just inside that door, and you'd pull the hose outside and you'd pressure wash them. And so when I was probably 11, 12, I would come down here on Saturdays and wash trucks, because when I finished washing them, I'd get to back them back in and pull the next one up. Well, by the time the next year rolled around, I was like 13, I'd go around the block.
Yeah.
I'd take it around the block. So my reward for washing a tractor trailer was to get to drive it around the block.
You gotta air dry it.
Yeah.
You gotta get the air dry.
That was cool. Yeah. So what it is that big door, roll-up door, wasn't on. So they've extended, I think they've extended the building, and that's why I thought it was a different building, is because they've added that on where the windows are, where the office was, where he had his offices in there. But where that garage door is on that end, that wasn't there. And when he first built this building, he bought a abandoned school bus. Actually, before he built the building, he bought an abandoned school bus, and he parked it over there where that door is now. It was outside, and on the back, that's what he used for a shop to start with before he built the shop.
The school bus?
Is the bus. It had all, it was just, it didn't drive anymore. It was just, and it had his parts, spare tires and junk, all tools and equipment. And that was his shop. And I remember the back door on that thing would open up, and he mounted a payphone on the back door of that. And that was his phone. And he, did his work. He maintained the trucks out of that before he built this building. And it was there for years and years and years and years. Even when we were racing out of building this race car, that old bus, they didn't use it anymore, but that old bus was still over there.
That's crazy. We'll have to go on some of those historic aerial websites, and they have like pictures, like satellite pictures of different years. We could probably go back and find a picture of this building with the bus still sitting there.
Wow. Yeah, that would have been 70, 75, 6, 7 ish. Yeah, if you could do that, you could probably get that. That I never thought about that. That's crazy.
Let's see if I can find that. That is even cooler that it's still the original building, because even that side door looks really pretty old.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up there and just kind of look, because it looks like they still wash vehicles there. But right inside the door on the right was the pressure washer. Yeah, that's it. Wow. And then you would pull it up here, and it seemed like there was a fuel tank up here at the front, at the back of the building, like there was a fuel tank right here, and you'd pull that truck up to right here, and you'd wash them right there. I started my clean freak, really early.
So you formed the habit of, I gotta clean this and then I'm gonna drive it.
That's
and
right.
You still do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I started it at an early age.
Do you think that you enjoy driving all over the place still? Because back in your younger years, every time you went somewhere, you were going to make something happen, and you came back and it was like you moved the needle forward. So
I do. I think that that's part of it, and I still love the adventure, the drive from one point A to point B. And that was ingrained in me before we started racing. My dad had the trucking company, and during the summer we would take a summer trip, out west to California, hauling produce and out there, and he let me drive. And that the old dome light story, he always had faster trucks than anybody else. And he was a peacock and a show-off. And when I first started driving the truck, sitting in his lap, but when he graduated onto the doghouse of the cab over and then on over to the passenger seat. Now, when we passed another truck, he'd reach over at night, he'd reach over and turn on the dome lights so the trucker could see that he wasn't getting dusted off by another man, but by a little kid.
That's awesome.
And so Steve Neal knew that story. So one time I was racing probably in 88 or 89 when we were really hauling. He said, come on the radio and said, flip on that dome light. Because we were trucking, you know, we were getting it.
That's really cool. It's so funny how just little things like that, you could just imprint, stick with you forever.
Yeah. Well, you know, this is kind of off the subject, but I was so honored when I first came to NASCAR in '82. Steve Neal and Robert Pemberton, I think, were both working at the Petties. I was so honored that they paid me any attention. You know, that Steve actually would come over and look and watch, and you know, he was taking it in. He was paying attention because we were near the same age, and I was way too young to be, you know, driving a cup car at that time. Back then, you know, that was pretty out of the ordinary. And just to have Steve Neal and Robin Pemberton, who worked on the Petties, pay any attention to me was just an incredible honor and a thrill and exciting for me. And it was really, really special to get to work with those guys and build Roush Racing from the ground up together and experience success together. It was really cool.
Was that around the same time when Jake Elder was asking you about your lead?
That would be, that was like 2 years, that was later. Well, Steve was paying attention already, but yeah, 1981 was the year when Jake Elder came to the very first race. You know, I was sitting on the fender of my trailer waiting for the pay shack to open up, get our money before we headed back to North Liberty, Indiana from North Wilkesboro. And he comes over, and because we qualified like 6th and never even been in the pits of a NASCAR race, you know, so he's paying attention. It's like something's weird with some kid, you know, that ain't ever seen before come in here and ran pretty fast. Let me go look at his car. And he's like scoping it all out. And oh, it was a trick car. It was a trick. And he leans over and looks inside here. I'm sitting on the fender of the trailer, and he looks in, he looks at me, and he says, "You only got 2 gauges?" I said, "Yeah, that's all you need." "God, you ain't got no tack." I said, "No, you don't need one." "How much lead's in this thing?" Well, I wasn't prepared. I knew I had to lie, but I hadn't come up with a figure. I hadn't run that through my head yet. I hadn't run that scenario. I didn't think somebody would ask. I knew that their cars had 125 pounds. Well, this car had 600. It was insane. It had 60% left side weight, where theirs had 53 and a half, you know. So when he asked me that, I knew I had to lie, but I didn't know what to say. So I just said 400, and he about fell out. I should have said 200. But yeah, he about fell out. But that was pretty special too, that Jake Elder, the historical race car genius, guru, speed, you know, guy, was paying attention to what I was doing. You know, it was crazy. But Jake did. That's what made Jake successful. So he paid attention. You know, he was an engineer. He didn't have, you know, college education or anything like that. But he paid attention. And his race cars, every race car he touched, hauled butt.
That's really cool. At that particular time, was he Dale Earnhardt's crew chief, or was he somewhere else?
It was 81. I don't know for sure who. I wasn't paying that much attention, because after he said that, you know, and I lied to him and told him 400, then he said, "You don't know who I am, do you?" Because I was real, you know, I didn't treat him friendly. I didn't know who he was. And so he said, "You don't know who I am, do you?" I said, "No." He said, J.C. Elder. I don't know. Jake Elder. Oh, I knew who Jake was. J.C. I didn't know, but Jake Elder I'd heard of. So, it was pretty crazy.
Did you ever tell him years later that you lied to him about how much lead was in your car?
No.
He never found out?
No. No, we both just moved on. But yeah, I when I told him 400 and he about fell out, I realized that I had not lied good enough. I had needed to put more thought into it than I did, but it caught me off guard. But that car was really special. It was not built like a normal NASCAR 500-mile race car was built. It was built like an ASA 100-lapper car would be built. But it fit their rules, fit NASCAR's rules, but it was way ahead of its time and super lightweight. And a lot of things on it, had to be beefed up later on as we started. But it was built to be a half-mile car, a short track car. It wasn't built to race on anything big, a big racetrack. It didn't have enough oil cooler, rear end cooler, radiator, or anything like that to do big tracks. But it worked for a half mile.
And you remember all this stuff. It's even cooler. Is to go from where everything started right there to that. Is that this building, this piece of concrete we're sitting on right there, was there for all of that.
Yeah, all that concrete was actually gravel back then. But that building, that mezzanine, I remember you'd go up those stairs and there'd be old truck parts up there and extra. That's where extra storage was and stuff. And I've been up there many a time. But that Coke machine financed my gas money.
So you could say your first job was a vending machine operator.
Exactly.
So do you have to go get the Coke to keep it stocked too?
No, they delivered the Cokes. They were just sitting in cases next to it. But it was my instructions. Don't you ever let that thing run out. That machine run out.
Was that probably one of those things that he was just tired of dealing with himself? Like, hey, the Coke machine's empty.
Well, that was a secondary problem. The first time was I was hitting him up for gas money, and it pissed him off. So he said, "Come on," and he walked over to the garden hose, and he grabbed up the garden hose, and he cut off a piece, about 5 feet long, 4 feet long, and he went over to his pickup truck, took the gas cap off, and got the gas can, and siphoned gas. And he says, "Now, you keep that can full of gas. Don't bother me no more." And so I had plenty of mouths full of gas, but I always kept, gas in that can and gas in my little mini bike. But, as things progressed to a motorcycle, now it was time to go to a gas station. So that's when he upgraded me to the Coke machine.
Oh.
Cash.
That's cool. Was his focus on teaching you things or keeping you from bothering him about something he didn't want to be bothered by, and it inadvertently taught you?
Both. I certainly didn't want to be bothered with that gas stuff, because he was mad when he did the deal with the hose and everything, gave it to me, and scared me, and so I never, I wasn't gonna bother him anymore about that. I siphoned the gas out of his truck, kept my can full, but he was very good at teaching and liked to teach. We had an acquaintance that got killed, that lost control of his vehicle on the back roads nearby here, wrecked and lost his life. And so I was probably 10 to 12 years old, probably 10 years old. And he drove me out to where it happened. And we got out and walked the site and the black marks, and he told me what he did. He went off of the edge here, and he overcorrected, and he lost control. And here's how how it happened. So he wanted me to know what happened, and wanted me to learn from it. And he did that a lot of times. So that was the way he taught. He always put me in situations as a kid, sometimes as a child, that adults would usually be in, not children. But he wanted me to learn from those. That was his way of teaching me things. You know, and you look at it today and you think, well, good grief, that's child, you know, that'd be almost considered child abuse. That was my father teaching me how to be a man, teaching me how to survive, teaching me how to not, you know, lose control and wreck my car and kill myself, you know. He was a hell of a man. You know, and he had a lot to do with how I turned out. I didn't want to be exactly like him. I wanted to be all the good things he was without the volatile temper and really the temper. He had a bad temper, and that scared me. And we talked back about the trucking company and that little office that we looked at. I can't tell you how many times that he got mad at the telephone, and he'd do stuff like take the telephone, unhook it, take it out in the shop, get a sledgehammer and bust it, or get mad at his wristwatch. He took it out in the shop, laid it in the floor, get a sledgehammer, smash it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff happened in that office and in that shop. Crazy stuff.
That's like a different kind of methodical destruction, not just yank the phone and throw it. Like, no, I'm going to take time, I'm going to unplug it,
yep.
I'm going to put it here where it's not going to make a huge mess, and then I'm going to smash it.
Yeah, no, he would be methodical like that. Now, if he's going to throw a fit immediately, he'd grab those ones that had the handle like that, and he'd grab it, and he'd just jam it, you know, on the table, just slamming it, you know. That was his, you know, immediate fit. But if he got real mad, he wouldn't throw a fit yet. He'd unplug it from the wall, walk it out there and sit on the floor and go over to the toolbox, get the hammer, and just smash it. One night in '77 in Springfield, Missouri, we were winning an ASA race where Trickle and all the ASA guys were there, and of course Rusty Wallace, everybody was there, and we had the race won. And right at the end of the race, the ignition went out, and we had this new whizzy electronic ignition. Well, it failed because it was so hot out that night. It tore our guts out because it would have been the biggest win, like a Daytona 500 would have been. And so he was real quiet after the race, loaded the car up. We always went to Shoney's after the races and to eat before we drive home from Springfield, Missouri. And I think Kenny Wallace was with us for some reason. And so we get out of the hauler to go inside, and about the time we get ready to go through the door, you start hearing this banging. And sure enough, it's my dad out there with a crowbar, and he beat that electronic ignition box off of the dash of the car. So he had to do that. Then he came in, sat down and ate, and everything was fine. But there's a lot of my dad's stories that could be told. You know, a lot of times he would do something that I knew wasn't good for him. And I remember asking him one time, it's like, Dad, why are you doing this? And he said, because I gave my word. And so what I learned from that is no matter how painful something was, if you give your word, a real man, because my dad was like, if you looked in the encyclopedia for what a man was, like a badass man, there was a picture in my mind, there was a picture of my dad there. You know, that was him. And so if I wanted to be a man, then, you know, I had to be a man of my word no matter what. And he was good as gold like that. And you know, I learned a lot of good things from him. Probably work ethic was number one. There was nothing that you couldn't do if you just worked hard enough at it.
That's it. I don't even know what else there is to point at that.
Yeah.
That was the mic drop. Like,
yeah, he's a badass. God, he's a badass.
That's awesome. See all that stuff, and like, it's one thing to like listen to stories and everything, but when you sit at the places where they happen or you see them, then it makes it more real.
This has been really good for me because the building part's something that I haven't even looked at or thought about, and so doing that with you has been really good for me, because reconnecting and staying connected to who I was when I grew up, the kid I was here in Batesville, before I went NASCAR racing, is really important to me. And I never really forgot where I came from, but I've been deeply reminded of where I came from looking at those buildings, and especially looking at the original truck shop. That's really cool, and it's important to me today to be the person that I was then. I've done a lot of things, had the luxury of working with some of the greatest people that have ever worked in motorsports and all that stuff. But that's not who I am. Who I am is who I was before I left here. And it's important to me to stay connected to that. And it's helped so much for me to just, kind of walk around those buildings and look in and think about those times, because they get forgotten. And so I thank you for that.
Well, that might be the most profound thing ever recorded by this GoPro. I'm glad that we were able to do that, and I think it's important to me to do that and preserve it, because like you said, it does get forgotten, it goes away, and then if there's no piece of it or mark of it or story to tell, then like, did it ever happen?
Right.
And anything learned from that is no longer useful to anybody, because someone's 20 years of struggle you could explain in 5 minutes and save someone 20 years of their life trying to figure it out.
Yep, that's right. That's why I said about history. You can learn a lot from history, and so I think it's right. That's why I did the podcast, because I wanted to put it somewhere where it could be accessed, when I'm gone or way down the road. If someone wants to access that, that's kind of a brief summary of year to year, every year, the hauler that we had, the car that we built, some of the racing highlights, and some of the things and experiences that we had. It's not everything, but it's a brief summary of all 40 years, each individual year by year. So that's kind of why I did them.
Yep, and if you like this stuff, you definitely need to go check that out, because this is only those episodes are some of them are like an hour long for each year. Yes. There's a lot in there, and it's really good stuff. Oh, I think we got everything that we wanted to see here. Mark's a busy guy. We don't want to hang him up too much.
Be sure and hit that subscribe button if you like this. There's much more to come.
What he said. Well, I would just like to say that the past 2 videos of this and the museum tour and stories from Mark are literally the most profound thing I have ever recorded for this YouTube channel. Probably the most useful information for me as a person too. Whenever he said that who I am is not all the things I've done, but who I am is the person I was before I left this place, I feel that, because I know that the version of me that I need to be to continue to pursue success is the version of me that put the Escalade together and loaded up a trailer and left Pennsylvania with everything I could fit in the trailer and never went back. That guy who was changing transmissions every month that's the me that I am. That's the me that I need to keep the perspective and need to stay being. So that was all really, really great. And I hope you guys learned something from it too, because I sure did. Now, I'd like to know what your favorite thing or what the most profound thing that he said that really made you think was. You put that in the comments, like, let's talk about it. I like to, flesh it out and see what comes up, because you realize things that you may not even notice at first, but sometimes kind of going through it makes you connect the dots and light bulb goes off in your head that way too. So let me hear it. Also, a little bit of a life update. We are packing up all this stuff this week, including all the merch here, and moving it to the new shop, which isn't too far from here. It's still in the area. It's just way bigger. So yeah, that's what's going on. That's why we haven't been wrenching on stuff. So the timing to bomb out to Arkansas and film that with Mark couldn't have worked out any better, because we can't start any new projects the next couple days here. We're gonna be packing everything, so you can make our packing easier if you went to stablesandautoworks.com and got yourself a shirt, hats. We got hoodies too. We got the Western Auto themed hoodies. They're like real high quality material, and we got the ICT hoodies too, the ones that have the old Suburban on them, which is outside. I now realize that. But yeah, and these hats, these are snapback hats. We've never sold just snapback hats before. Everything else has been flex fit, which we also have. So head on over to stablesandautoworks.com, check it out. If you don't want to, I won't be offended, but glad you're here either way.